Lake Belton Middle School serves a diverse population of students that all have special needs to help them achieve academic success. So one of the questions that I thought of while doing this presentation and doing this research project was, what are those needs and how can we meet them? Data revealed that out of all the groups on our campus, our special education students and our English language learning students struggled the most with their test scores and with overall academic performance. My hypothesis is that if we change our procedures for SPED and ELL, and if we try to do a better job of vertically aligning their curriculum and create classes that they can have on a regular weekly basis, then we'll see improvements in their test scores. There's inconsistencies and gaps with our students' learning. They don't get to meet up at the same times, at the same day. Sometimes they don't get to go to their classes at all. And if they had a set weekly schedule, then we could already plan around that. They might miss an elective or two, like they might not be able to go to extracurricular classes. However, they would have a set schedule where they could receive services that they'd need to improve their grades. So another issue that I believe can be improved upon with our campus is how our teachers are actually set up for special education and English language learners. Right now, our team is broken up by grade level. These special education teachers, they're basically responsible for all of the core curriculum for each grade level. I feel like that if we were to change that over to core subject areas and each teacher is responsible for one core subject area, that we would have improvement with our teacher and student interaction, and our teachers would be able to better service those students. For example, if I am a science teacher and I'm a special education teacher as well, if I'm responsible for only science topics 6th through 8th grade, then I'll be able to help these students better because I could vertically align everything from 6th grade all the way up to 8th grade, and I would be considered highly qualified in that topic. And so any questions that those students would have, I'd be much better equipped to help them instead of me being in like a history classroom or a math classroom or an English classroom. I wouldn't be nearly as comfortable helping those students out in those areas because that's not what I'm certified in. And with talking with some of these teachers, they were explaining to me how they almost had to teach themselves in the class before they could actually help their kids out. So to me, that's definitely a big issue because it's going to be much more difficult for them to make accommodations for these students, and it's going to be much more difficult for them to help these students if they're having to learn the material first. So after looking at the problem and trying to think of different solutions, I had to consider some of the different questions that would come up with this whole process. I wanted to look at cost analysis first because that's a big part of making a campus-wide plan. So two things that I had to consider were primarily time and staff available. The first question with staff being available is I wanted to make sure that we actually had enough special education and ELL teachers to cover these positions and actually break them up according to core subject area instead of grade level. The second thing I had to consider was the time that was available, both for teachers and for students. We're going to be adding new classes, possibly, to this upcoming schedule, and so we have to make sure, can we fit this in, or do we have to take out electives, or how would that work into the overall campus plan? I also had to consider if it would even be worth going through all the different steps to set up a plan, and would it be worth, would it have a big enough impact for our campus to go through the whole process? Looking at data and looking at our campus reports and our demographic information, the amount of special education and English language learners that we have on our campus have increased over the past couple of years. So knowing those percentages and knowing that amount that we have, it's definitely worthwhile, and it will make a large impact on our overall scores and on our student population. Then I went ahead and took the next step, and I started analyzing information using multiple measures. I used data from TEA, looked at our STAR scores and our benchmark scores. I looked at our campus report cards, and basically just went through and gathered as much statistical data as I could to help make a good decision. Then after that, I went ahead and started speaking with the different stakeholders that were involved on our campus. I spoke with our special education coordinators, I spoke with our English language learner coordinator, and I spoke with some of the teachers that are directly involved with helping these two populations out. After speaking with everyone, it was basically unanimous that yes, something needed to happen. And after speaking with them about my plan, they agreed that that would be a step in the right direction. So once I knew that I had our team on board and basically everyone viewed these changes as positive changes, then I had to start looking at root causes for the problem to make sure that the changes that we made were relevant and helpful and actually address the issue. There were a few things that popped up immediately. In 2012 and 2013, our district had boundary changes that greatly impacted the populations that we serve. On our campus specifically, we had an increase in students that were low economic income. We had an increase in our ethnic diversity. We also had an increase in our special education population. We also, a little bit later on, about 2013, 2014, we had a completely different group come in from Cedar Crest Behavioral Clinic. And these students brought with them behavioral challenges and different interventions that they needed to help them be academically successful as well. When you factor in all of those different things together, it really changed who we were serving and how we needed to serve them. And unfortunately, since it kind of happened in a short time frame, our school wasn't adequately prepared right off the bat to service these students well. So those are some of the major changes. Now, we also had a change in our leadership, which really affects our decision-making process. We lost one of our long-standing principals. She was promoted and moved on. And then we gained 2 new assistant principals. So with that transition period as well, it was difficult for us to make changes because our new administrative staff, they had to figure out our values. They had to figure out how this school operated. They had to know about our district and what made our district work. So during this whole season of change that we went through, there was a lot of obstacles, and these were some of the main reasons why we started to see a decrease in our scores with these populations. The final step really is to look at how we would actually implement this plan and put it into action. So one of the first things that we would look at doing is at semester, we would work with our administrative team and the people in charge of scheduling, and we would actually try to add in a special ed or ELL course that students could register for at the start of the new semester. One of the most important steps to take in this whole process is communication. It's vital that all the people involved with this know exactly what's going on. To help with this, we can inform all of the stakeholders about the changes that are happening to make sure that everyone's in agreement and to make sure that everyone's on the same page with those changes. We could inform the parents of special education students and English language learning students. We could inform them of the changes that are upcoming so they know to look for new classes and they know to look for maybe even different teachers that their kids are going to be working with. We could actually inform the students themselves so there's no surprises when they come back to school and they know what's going on. And then we could also go ahead and let the rest of the teaching staff, just the general teaching staff, we could let them know what's going on, maybe in kind of like a meeting or something like that, just to give them a general idea of what's happening, because those teachers might want to begin to work with special education and ELL teachers to figure out maybe how they can help vertically align, how they can help provide more resources for those teachers, and just so there's a good line of communication happening there so everything goes as smoothly as possible. Once the entire process is finished and the changes have been made, it's really important as an administrator to go back and review how everything worked to see if you actually had positive changes or not. One way that I would do this as an administrator is to make sure I go back and set high standards for the special education and ELL teachers. Since we're actually adding in new classes for these students, it would be really important to go back and look at the standards that those teachers have set. So I'd have to go back and look at content standards to make sure that their curriculum is aligned with the state standards and with what the other teachers are going over. I would want to make sure that those teachers are using formative and summative assessments to track student progress. The reason why that's so important is because that data gives me a starting point to monitor student progress, which is vital to see if they actually succeeded or not, and to see if there were positive trends with this new plan. Some of the different things that would be a very useful tool for me to look at as an administrator would be STAR scores, benchmark scores. I could actually have meetings with these teachers and with some of the students and get a feel for how they felt the program went. I could ask them if any changes need to be made, if any suggestions, if they had any suggestions for me to go back and look at this whole process to make it go even more smoothly the next time around. Thank you very much for your time. Our goal is to help these students out, and I'm confident that with these changes, we're going to be able to do just that.